From Washington tonight, rights for all. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, it wasn't until about 1992 when I began my clerkship for Justice Clarence Thomas that I really began to pay attention to how the media writes about the Supreme Court. So I'm talking about the New York Times and the Washington Post, Time Magazine, Newsweek, etc., television reporters. 90% of them believe that the court rulings were radical and outside the mainstream unless those rulings affirmed whatever the New York Times and Harvard Law School believed was the right outcome. Understand? So from the death penalty to abortion to criminal justice matters, liberal journalists and politicos insisted that the Supreme Court act as a rubber stamp for their views. So in cases where justices merely applied the facts of the case to the law, oh, forget it, of course. That's not the proper understanding of the court's role. The court, properly understood, is a check on both the legislative and the executive branches and on the states where constitutional issues are involved. So when the court today issued its 6-3 ruling striking down New York's very restrictive concealed carry law, the reaction from the press and the assorted Democrats, it was textbook.
The Supreme Court decision is going to call into question pretty much every piece of gun restriction across the country.
What the conservatives on the Supreme Court are saying is we want the Second Amendment to be a first-class right like the First Amendment. And we want to be able to carry guns anywhere, anytime, without any sort of regulation by the government.
The problem here is so many people get hit by these guns. When you read the news headlines every day of children crossing the street, people that were doing nothing because everyone decided to be a good guy with a gun.
Of course, the idea that you're in Times Square, amidst all the hubbub and human reaction and potential of gangs and so forth and so on, that people can be easily carrying around concealed weapons. That's just startling. We have a Supreme Court that is out of touch with modern day realities.
David Gergen, wrong. Oh, and wait, wrong. Okay, Justice Thomas, in writing the majority opinion, he interpreted the Second Amendment in the only way that makes sense, writing that the constitutional right to bear arms in public for self-defense is not a second-class right subject to an entirely different body of rules than the other Bill of Rights guarantees. We know of no other constitutional right that an individual may exercise only after demonstrating to government officers some special need. Well, that's not how the First Amendment works. It's not how the Sixth Amendment works. It's not how the Second Amendment works when it comes to the public carry for self-defense. New York's proper cause requirement violates the 14th Amendment in that it prevents law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their right to keep and bear arms. Of course, as usual, my old boss is 100% correct. Every other right in the Bill of Rights is read to limit the government's power to restrict it. The 10 Amendments were written by the framers to protect us from a corrupt, oppressive government. Of course, the founders knew what it was like to live under tyranny, and therefore the people's right to bear arms to them was key to maintaining a free country. Makes sense. Of course, left-wingers, though, in the government across the United States, they despise the Constitution, which means they're enraged over this ruling.
This decision isn't just reckless, it's reprehensible. The insanity of the gun culture that has now possessed everyone all the way up to even to the Supreme Court.
And we cannot allow New York to become the wild, wild west. We'll not allow our city to live in fear that everyone around us is armed and that any altercation could evolve into a shootout.
It's devastating. I mean, it's just fundamentally devastating. The proliferation of illegal guns is a challenge of our time, and we have got to rise up as a country.
Yeah, Lightfoot, because your streets are so safe, right? Now, every day these same people betray the rule of law in their own cities and states because whether it's Lori Lightfoot or Hochul or Adams, they're content to leave their own law-abiding citizens defenseless and make the job of law enforcement at the same time more difficult pretty much at every turn. So for the regular person out there, the workaday person, it's a lose-lose proposition. But the elites, They always protect each other. Celebrities and other special people were the only ones New York believed had the meaningful Second Amendment right to carry a concealed weapon. Now, back in 2010, a list of New York City concealed carry permit holders was obtained by the New York Daily News. People like Mark Anthony, shock jock Howard Stern, Robert De Niro, Donald Trump, his son Donald Jr., Mets third baseman David Wright, and even Martha Stewart's daughter, radio host Alexis Stewart, all were authorized to carry a weapon concealed in the city. Now, John Schuyler Chambers, a lawyer who's helped a lot of New Yorkers get these gun permits for more than two decades now, said that they can get their own security, but with the internet, it's much easier to find people. They don't want to find someone on their lawn at 5 in the morning. Okay. From just that comment, we see the absurdity in this New York law. Democrats, as usual, cater to the elites because they're the only ones who have a legitimate concern about an intruder showing up at their homes or threatening them in public. Well, and another reason the 6-3 court was right is by the silliness of the dissent. In it, Justice Breyer, of course, who's retiring, rather than addressing the plain language and the historical circumstances that inform the words of the Second Amendment, he discussed gun suicides and listed the well-known mass shootings in America like Uvalde, Buffalo, Orlando, Newton, Dayton, and of course, it talked about all the horrors of that. Well, Alito, Justice Alito, who is in the majority, wrote separately in a concurrence, he slapped back at Justice Breyer, saying, why does the dissent think it's relevant to recount the mass shootings that have occurred in recent years? Does the dissent think that laws like New York's prevent or deter such atrocities? Will a person bent on carrying out a mass shooting be stopped if he knows that it is illegal to carry a handgun outside the home? And how does the dissent account for the fact that one of the mass shootings near the top of its list took place in Buffalo? The New York law at issue in this case obviously did not stop that perpetrator. I don't know, that's heck of a retirement send-off for Breyer, isn't it? Now, another obvious reason the court got it right, reactions from some of the most unhinged personalities out there, like former sports guy Keith Olbermann, who tweeted that the ruling shows that the court should be dissolved and advises that states just ignore the ruling. Now, that's a neat trick. Just ignore the court. Yeah. Remember, these are the same people who are constantly warning about how, under Republicans, democracy is at risk. Democracy is in peril. I don't know. Call me crazy. I think that Olbermann should just stick to memorabilia collecting because he's actually really good at that. Of course, this is how it always works, though, with these people. When they don't get their way, they want to tear down the entire system. In other words, abolish the Electoral College, burn city blocks, tear down statues, and pack the court. No, forget packing the court. Just dissolve it altogether now. That's where we've come. This is sheer lunacy. It's anti-constitutional. It's anti-American. So in the end, this is not a radical decision. It's not a crazy decision. It's a long overdue decision. And contrary to all the caterwauling out there on the left, the ruling doesn't even mean that states have no power to regulate guns. It just can't prohibit law-abiding residents from carrying a gun for self-defense. As Justice Alito noted, that's all we decide. Our holding decides nothing about who may lawfully possess a firearm or the requirements that must be met to buy a gun, nor does it decide anything about the kinds of weapons that people may possess. Nor have we disturbed anything that we said in Heller or McDonald versus Chicago about restrictions that may be imposed on the possession or carrying of guns. Get it? But the modern American left, they don't like you, okay? They despise you. You have to understand this. And they do not want the regular, ordinary people to be free to defend themselves and their families. Now, why? Why don't they want that? Because they want you dependent, they want you scared, they want you groveling for whatever scraps they decide to throw at you. They'd abolish the Second Amendment in a heartbeat if they could. and frankly, the entire Constitution for that matter. But thankfully, our founders were very wise. They saw how power corrupted otherwise sensible men and how important it was to leave behind a document that would protect all the people, not just the upper crust, against the abuse. And thankfully, we have 6 justices on the court who honored the plain language of the text and the intent of the framers. And that's the angle. All right, back in July 2014, a federal judge declared DC's ban on carrying handguns in public unconstitutional. Well, since then, thousands have obtained a concealed carry permit after taking at least 18 hours of training from a Metropolitan Police Department certified firearms instructor. Now, the very first person to become one of those instructors was also the first one to get a concealed carry permit in the District of Columbia. I happen to know him. His name is Leon Spears, and he joins me now. Leon, I think you were the first person to call me. I think it was within a half hour after this ruling came down. What do people need to know about what this means and why this is good news for the average person out there who is scared in the streets of urban America?
Well, nice to see you, Laura, as always. First off, there are really like 4 points. The first point is that obviously the Constitution was upheld today. So you have a right to carry a firearm outside of your home. So Heller decided that you can keep a firearm inside your home for self-defense. So this is considered just groundbreaking because, again, you can defend yourself outside of your home. Then the second thing is, okay, so once you are able to carry outside your home, then how are you carrying? Are you carrying openly or concealed? So if you are allowed by the state's provisions to carry concealed, then it goes to step 3. Okay, so how can you carry concealed? Either restrictions, so you can have restrictions on training, how long the training is. You can have magazine capacities. You can have fingerprints, photos, background checks. Those are all the requirements. Then you can have sensitive places, schools, fully owned and operated by the government structures, daycares, hospitals. You can have limitations for sensitive places. But again, then you can go to reciprocity and recognition. So let's say you're allowed to carry, but then sure enough, what does that state say? Do they recognize another state concealed carry permit? Or better yet, is there a reciprocity agreement amongst attorney generals or governments that allow each other to conceal in each other's jurisdictions? So many people don't understand that today was a great day for gun ownership and empowerment for people to be able to defend themselves.
Now, I want to play something from MSNBC's Yamiche Alcindor. Watch.
Talking to people who are advocates for new gun laws and new gun restrictions, this is devastating to them. They feel like this is going to make America less safe. You have people that think in blue states that they're in some ways protected from that. That if you live in New York or California, that you somehow will not have to deal with the sort of conservative things that you see happening in other states.
What? Leon, you're less safe because of this. Does that make any sense, given your extensive background in firearms training, to help people get these concealed carry permits?
It's so empowering to teach people in DC about the ability to carry a firearm. I don't know how many people are my clients that actually are just empowered that, number one, they have the ability to carry, to defend themselves and their families. They want to be law-abiding, and the criminals are choosing every day not to go by the strenuous process of buying a gun, getting trained, getting background checks, getting government approval. The bad guys are not doing that. People just want to be able to defend themselves to the best of their ability, and that's what the Supreme Court said today.
Yeah, Leon, everyone has to understand that to get these concealed carry permits, nothing that the court said today diminishes all of the requirements set by various jurisdictions. All it says is once you have all that, you can't be denied
That is
arbitrarily the right to carry concealed. So none of these people have read the decision. None of these people know anything about the law, but they're doing the histrionic thing to try to scare people for political reasons. But Leon, you made it so clear for us. Thank you so much. It is great to see you tonight. And while blue state governors' response to today's Supreme Court ruling has predictably come down on the side of the whole elites over the citizens things, well, many still think there could be viable options to lead this country should Joe Biden choose not to run in 2024. Politico is out with a new piece today about the Democratic governors positioning themselves for a potential run. You ready? The names include power-hungry failures. Phil Murphy of New Jersey. Now, the final report cut on COVID, weighing all the health outcomes in New Jersey, economic impact on education, found that his state finished last. Okay? Then on the list is J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. Now, he has a big appetite for destruction because last year his state lost 122,000 residents, the largest decline in state history. Then there's Gretchen Whitlis Whitmer of Michigan. Now, her own state legislature had to fight to end her emergency powers after she refused to relinquish them, and the state legislature won. And finally, who could forget Golden State Golden Boy, Gavin Newsom? Because his governorship is going so well that residents are fleeing California's high taxes and unaffordable housing and running away to places like Mexico, I kid you not. Joining me now is Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary, current Fox News contributor, and author of the new book, Suppression, Deception, Snobbery, and Bias. Ari, I have to say, if this is all they got, Republicans have to feel pretty good tonight. I mean, J.B. Pritzker? What?
Yeah, it's been a long time, Laura, since the Democrats reached down to the ranks of their governors for a candidate. You have to go back to 1996. Bill Clinton was the last governor who became the Democratic nominee. They liked senators in 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012, 16, 20. They all nominated senators or former senators. But let me remind you, in the 2019-2020 cycle, 28 Democrats ran for president in 2019 and 20. 4 of them were governors or former governors. So when Joe Biden announces he's not running, which he will do after the midterm election and into early 2023, it will be a Donnybrook, a free-for-all. Every Democrat will jump into the water, governors, senators, and dog catchers, one and all.
Well, Ari, they're already getting ready because, of course, the Democrats and the media are all, setting upon Biden for his age, for his lack of mental acuity. It's now, it's not a secret anymore. Everybody's kind of talking about it. But in Illinois, I just want to focus on Pritzker for a moment because you have these major companies that are just deciding to leave Illinois because of the high tax, high regulation, dangerous crime in the city of Chicago, obviously. We have Citadel, Ken Griffin's company, leaving Illinois. That was a huge loss. He's going to Miami. We have Caterpillar leaving. We have Boeing leaving. I mean, these are blue chip companies saying, we like to stay, we love Illinois, but under this leadership, we're out. How does J.B. Pritzker get on that list?
Yeah,
Total loser.
And that's going to be the problem for every one of these Democratic governors, whether it's New York, New Jersey, California, Illinois. Those states are all losing populations mostly to red states for the logical reasons that you just cited. Quality of life issues, crime issues, economic issues, and it's wonderful. I'm in Chicago right now, Laura, and it's interesting to note the major businesses that are pulling chalks and getting out of here. And they're doing it because they're fed up. They're doing it because the state just has one answer to everything, and that's to raise taxes and make life more difficult. So they're voting with their corporate headquarters. Will the people start to see it? Will it change the reactions in the states? I don't know about that because the majorities are so hugely Democratic in California, Illinois, and New York. But it really does make it hard to be a governor and become a president as a sitting Democratic governor.
Ari, they're going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue when these companies leave, which they already said they're leaving. The numbers for Biden are so bad. I mean, every time you come on, we say he's reached a new low. Well, he reached another new low today. 33% in one poll, 36% in another. Among suburban voters, he has an approval of 37%. Among non-white, 43% approve, 49% disapprove. I mean, Ari, this is, it's not getting any better. The more they put Joe Biden out, the worse he seems to do. Final thoughts.
And he's about to turn 80 years old, and it shows. Every time Joe Biden is seen walking, I think he loses a vote. People look at him and they just go, he doesn't have what it takes, the stamina, the energy, the strength to be president. This all adds up, and it's why the Democrats are in such trouble.
Oh, Ari, 80 is the new 40, isn't it? Good to see you. All right, Joe Biden smeared thousands of mom and pop gas station owners across the country yesterday when he claimed that they could lower their gas prices just on their own. Well, one of them is here next to tell us why Biden's wrong. Plus, why did Bill Gates try to purchase huge tracts of land in North Dakota without anyone finding out? That mystery revealed in moments.
To the companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump, this is a time of war, global peril, Ukraine. These are not normal times. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you are paying for the product. Do it now. Do it today. Your customers, the American people, they need relief now.
Oh my God, can you believe that's the President of the United States? I can't. Now, so that was Biden yesterday smearing a group of mostly mom and pop gas station owners as greedy, blaming them for being responsible for keeping prices high at the pump. So what's the truth here? We decided to go right to the source. Joining me now is Lonnie McCorder, owner of 36 Lynn Refuel Station near Minneapolis. Lonnie, I know where you are because I know Minneapolis really well. I'll be there in a couple of weeks. Do operators like you control the prices as the president indicated?
You know, it's a great question, Lauren. Thanks for having me back. You know, we small operators control very little in the overall cost of fuel and on the retail end of things, and it's upsetting and really reprehensible what our president, the statements he made yesterday regarding our industry, and it's I can tell you it hurts a bit, and as well as the other 148,000 some odd convenience store operators, many of which are working tonight inside their store.
Yeah, and also operating on a very narrow margin of profit, I understand, because I have friends who own various service stations across the country. And so a lot of them say, well, we make a lot of our money on snacks and other supplies that are sold in our gas stations. So if people are spending a lot of money on gas, they actually aren't spending on the other items on which the service station owners make more of a profit. Is that accurate from your perspective?
That's correct, and that's a great point you brought up, Laura. And I'd also like to bring up the cash flow situation as well. When we small operators, some of us have credit lines that get run out pretty quickly when gas escalates as quickly as it has higher. So we have more money stuck in the ground for inventory, and it's less available for investing inside our stores and maintaining our sites to the standards that we'd like to keep it at.
And Lonnie, when you think about the fact that we have 400 years supply of oil and gas in the United States, 400 years where the United States could be independent and free of foreign, dependence and so forth. What does that make you? How does that make you feel, given what he said?
It's a very challenging dynamic there. As you know, there's a number of individuals who are ready to work and get projects done that can continue to allow us to be energy independent and continue to work hard on the policy end of things. I'm actually out in D.C. at the moment talking about that sole issue, about how do we keep costs lower for the consumer that coming out of our stores each day. Now, convenience stores, I see over 156 million individuals per day inside of our stores, which is equates to about half of America coming in and out of our doors, and we're just doing our best to support the communities that we serve.
Yeah, and people have to understand, these are mom and pop stores and entrepreneurs who want to make a better life for themselves, their families, and help their communities. And you're essential to our communities. And Lonnie, thank you for the perspective and the understanding tonight. We appreciate it. And now another Ingram exclusive. North Dakotans were up in arms this week when a rogue trust purchased 2,100 acres of farmland 50 miles from the Canadian border. They were even more incensed when the state's attorney general got to the bottom of who was behind this. Bill Gates, the man who is pushing for the U.S. to move 100% of artificial beef, purchase the land under something called Red River Trust. Isn't that cute? Now, while the transfer of ownership to the trust breaks no North Dakota laws, Gates has proven that it has to prove that it's not in violation of corporate farming laws. So has he done this? Joining me now is North Dakota Commissioner of Agriculture, Doug Goehring. Doug, how are your constituents reacting to their possible new neighbor, and why the secrecy about the eventual ownership here?
Yeah, hard to say why. I would say it's land transactions generally aren't that public, but somebody caught this one. Maybe it was in the courthouse. Maybe somebody was going through files and deeds, and when it was being filed, maybe it sparked some interest. But it certainly sparked a lot of comments from the community, from those across the state, landowners, farmers, ranchers. It's not like Mr. Gates has necessarily embraced the values of our community, of our state, of rural America, and especially with the fact that his attack on meat protein, his persistent attack on CO2 and being defined as toxic gas and climate change, and then his positions on population control, it's got a lot of people up in arms.
Yeah, well, the meat, the attacks on meat in and of itself are completely run counter to the North Dakotan agricultural interests that I know. I mean, dependent upon various meats, chicken, beef, etc., to make a living and to provide services and products that people want. So, Mr. Commissioner, we're showing the land owned by Bill Gates throughout the United States in a graphic here. It adds up to almost 270,000 acres.
Yep.
That's a lot of land. It's a lot of land. Does he get? Yeah, what? That's a lot. Do you think he gets the agriculture here, or what's going on?
Well, I'm not sure if it's a matter of some people that just look for a way to have a stable investment, and if you purchase land, chances are it's probably not going to devalue much. Who knows how quickly it'll appreciate. But I think the problem that many have run into in the state of North Dakota, and especially in that area, is what the land sold for. It probably could have brought more at public auction. There were many that had said land up here sold for more than that just a while ago. So why this sale? Why did they seek him out? Why did they want to make this deal? And I really can't answer that. I can only convey the sentiments of the people in North Dakota who are just frustrated, irritated, and they feel like they're exploited by the ultra rich.
Yeah, well, they swoop in, they take whatever they want, and they have the bucks to pay for it. I mean, it's just a fact. Doug, we're going to stay on this, but we appreciate your perspective tonight. Thank you. And up next, yet another Ingram Angle exclusive. A new book reveals how General Jim Mattis, remember Mad Dog Mattis, threw his own Marines under the bus 15 years ago in Afghanistan. One of those Marines is here to tell next what the story was, what really happened. Stay there. General James Mad Dog Mattis, remember him? Well, he won universal praise for his military service, of course, and his dedication to country. But his commitment to some of the men and women he led in battle, especially the Marines who served under him in Afghanistan, is now being called into question. Fox's Bill Melugin has the new details from our West Coast newsroom. Bill.
Well, Laura, back in 2007, an elite group of U.S. Marines were falsely accused of massacring civilians after they defeated an ambush by Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. And those Marines say General James Mad Dog Mattis completely threw them under the bus. So take a look at these images. These are from that attack back in March of 2007. The Marines were in a 6-vehicle convoy when they were attacked by a suicide bomber driving a van, and then Taliban fighters on both sides of the road who opened fire on them. Now, after those Marines repelled the ambush, images immediately began circulating showing bullet-riddled vehicles and ambulances carrying away bloodied Afghan men. Now, false witness accounts began to fuel worldwide headlines accusing the Marines of slaughtering civilians. The Marines were then expelled from Afghanistan within 5 days, and they say their due process went completely out the window. Now, retired Marine Major Fred Galvin was in that ambush, and he says General Mattis unleashed 45 criminal investigators and 4 prosecuting attorneys against the Marines who were falsely accused of essentially mass murder. They also say General Mattis enacted a gag order on 2 Marine officers who he named as co-defendants in what ended up being the longest war crimes trial in Marine Corps history. Now, after 12 years, Major Galvin and the other accused Marines were finally cleared of any and all wrongdoing. They had their permanent records wiped clean. They claim the military destroyed their reputation and tried to imprison them. And Major Galvin says these previous comments from General Mattis in 2005 paint him as a total hypocrite.
Actually, it's a lot of fun to fight them. You know, it's a hell of a hoot. It's fun to shoot some people. I'll be right up front with you. I like brawling. You go into Afghanistan, you got guys who slapped women around for 5 years because they didn't wear a veil. You know, guys like that ain't got no manhood left anyway, so it's a hell of a lot of fun to shoot them.
And Laura, Major Galvin says when push came to shove, General Mattis didn't have their backs. Quite the opposite. We'll send it back to you.
Wow, thank you, Bill. Joining us now is retired Major Fred Galvin, author of the new book, A Few Bad Men, the true story of U.S. Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America. Major, this is so disturbing to me on so many levels. I want to thank you for being here. Explain for the viewers at home why you chose to come forward now after all this time.
Well, this is a very important story, and thank you for having me, Laura. This situation has not ever been fixed. It's not getting any better. We have a current situation in the same command, the Marine Special Operations Command, with 3 special operators right now encountering the same type of situation. They defended themselves. Story of like David and Goliath. A huge man assaulted them, and now they're up for homicide because they defended themselves and they used minimal force. So our case, very similar, but it was in Afghanistan versus this current case. It's ongoing in Iraq. But our case, we were attacked with a massive car bomb, shot at on both sides of the road, had sniper fire. We fought our way out. Then the information warfare started from the Taliban. We get back, the Army, who is in control of the Special Operations Command and Theater, turned this over, recommended that we be charged with homicide, and then this case became handled by then Lieutenant General Jim Mattis, who is the MARCENT commanding general. He had received all the sworn testimonies from every single one of our Marines, to include the Afghan interpreter, who was also on the patrol. And guess what, Laura? They all said the same thing. Even the Marine that went down the road singing like a bird that said, I think some civilians were killed that day. Well, his email that he immediately sent said the exact opposite. He perjured himself by stating it was indeed a complex ambush. We were shot at on both sides of the road.
But I want everyone to understand this. I want everyone to understand that Mattis's first instinct seemed, and correct me if I'm wrong, his first instinct seemed to be to disbelieve the men under his command and believe those who were not in his purview, about whom he had no real understanding or sense of veracity. And I gotta say, to give everyone a sense of how this was all reported, the New York Times wrote this the day of the incident. They said, U.S. troops opened fire on a highway filled with civilian cars and bystanders, Afghan witnesses and some officials blaming the Americans for indiscriminately shooting at civilian vehicles in anger after the explosion. Fred, I remember when this story was written, and at the time I said to myself, and I think my radio crew, this is blankety blank, like BS. It was a narrative that they needed to sell, and Mattis, who everyone says is the greatest thing since sliced bread, Mattis bought into it. Real quick.
Absolutely, our entire command was anxious. They, so General Mattis, he sent those criminal investigators. He had my polygraph. He threatened to deport one Marine's family back to Mexico, who was legally naturalized, and they. This is how we should never treat Americans, or we're going to lose our morale, and we're going to end up like Russia, incapable of ever winning another war.
Incapable of recruiting anyone to actually fight in our military after issues like this. Major, thank you for sharing this story and your book. And up next, our good friend Amala Ekpunobi reacts to one of the weirdest and most unhinged specials ever to be broadcast on MSNBC. That video is shocking in moments. Okay, we've showed you some pretty bonkers stuff from MSNBC over the years, but we've just uncovered one of the most unhinged discussions ever.
As Black women, every single thing about us is politicized and criminalized, right? I know everyone keeps saying that we're in the midst of a national reckoning. You know, I'm still waiting for that. I think, honestly, what I think is more accurate is to say that we've been in the midst of an awakening. You know, we recently passed the Crown Act. People get it wrong when they think that the Crown Act is just about hair. The Crown Act is about white supremacy.
Oh my goodness.
Here now is Amala Ekpunobi, PragerU personality and former left-wing activist. Amala, there's a lot of problems in our country, a lot of suffering and concern. Is this among the chief concerns that Black women face today, do you believe?
Not this Black woman in particular, I'll say, Laura. When I watched this video, I could not believe my eyes. What you have is multiple rich, elite Black women sitting at this beautifully made dining table talking about their oppression. And what does that oppression look like? It looks like having the wrong hair and makeup when you show up to be on the news or to do your own show. These women have made a lot of their money in their career off of talking about Black oppression in America. And if that's the best example that they have to make their claim, they need to stop doing these jobs.
Well, Joy Reid was one of them who was chiming in here. And just to add some more flavor to all of this, Amala, I think we need to hear from Joy. Watch.
How do we get our hair and makeup together? Back in the news business, your beautiful hair would not have been allowed, even 5 years ago.
I go on TV and I'm like, I look a damn mess. Like what happening? I'm gonna tell you this. The Time cover, they called me 3 days before and said, can you come in to do a photo shoot? They did not tell me it was the cover. They said bring a yellow shirt and a blue shirt out of my closet. Wow. No wardrobe, no nothing. So.
That's a huge amount to sacrifice, isn't it, Amala? You only got 3 days notice. I mean, I remember getting like 20 minutes notice when I was invited on various shows.
Yeah, you know,
and never looked all that great either, I have to say.
The horror, I can't believe it. You know, it's a wonder, Laura, that I was even able to make it on your show tonight because I couldn't find somebody to do my hair and makeup. This is the oppression that we face on a daily basis. And the fact that they can all sit at this table and and preach and agree with this, it is absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, first of all, they're all pretty good looking. They all look pretty. They all look pulled together. So, Amala, thank you for joining us. Great to see you as always. All right, we have a big update to an intoxicating story we brought you last night and a few shots. Stay there.